A convict named Colin is inside a transport vehicle as the radio talks about him being the primary suspect in the deaths of 5 women. He arrives at the courthouse and presents himself before the judge, feigning honesty and obedience. Colin asks for a chance since he's changed and won't let the judge down. Dr. Ross refutes his statement, saying Colin is a narcissist and violent, especially with women. He compares Colin with known serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer and John Wayne Gacy. But Colin stands up to try and defend himself. He's ordered to sit down, and Dr. Ross continues about the violence buried within Colin. He reminds everyone that the families of the deceased women are praying for Colin not to be released. The judge announces that there must be a unanimous vote for parole and tells him he can plead again in 5 years. Colin is transported back to prison when his nose starts to bleed. The cop hands him a tissue, and Colin takes the opportunity to choke him and hold him at gunpoint. The driver stops the vehicle and aims his gun at Colin, but Colin says he just wants freedom and orders him to drop the weapon. When the driver obeys, Colin ends both of the cops' lives. Meanwhile, renovations are being done at Terry's home, a mother of 2. Her best friend Meg visits during a run while Colin walks past by. Terry's husband, Jeffrey, arrives soon after, and the couple gets into a small argument when Meg leaves. Terry complains he's always away and will miss him even more once Jeffrey leaves on the trip with his dad. Terry asks him to go on a trip with just the 2 of them, and Jeffrey agrees, but looks uninterested. She announces that she'll go to the store and he can spend time with the kids before he leaves. But Jeffrey can't since he's running late and needs to pack. Terry worries about Jeffrey going on the trip since the weather will be bad. He kisses her goodbye and leaves. On the other hand, Colin stalks his ex, Alexis, in a car as she's on a date. He hijacks the car and follows her home, scaring Alexis when he appears unexpectedly. Colin holds her and asks her to give him a chance. He talks about getting new identities, getting married, and starting a new life with each other. Out of fear, Alexis agrees she'll come with him and still loves him. She lies when Colin asks her about another man and her phone dings. Colin reveals that he saw her on a date, and Alexis tries to lie about it. He takes out a note from her boyfriend that he found on her bed. When Alexis tells him she tried to wait, Colin brings out a stack of letters he sent her, which she had never responded to. Alexis grabs her phone and runs away, but Colin cuts her off at the front door. She rushes upstairs, but he catches up and throws her phone. Alexis describes how sick he is and demands he leave her alone. Colin doesn't mind her words, as he's going crazy about Alexis and her new man. Colin demands the truth from her, so Alexis shouts what he wants to hear. As she's shouting, her voice echoes and causes him to clutch his head. Colin apologizes, but grasps Alexis's neck when she gets close. He chokes her down to the ground and beats her with the lamp. Colin drives away, and it's raining heavily. Dr. Ross's words echo in his head and distract him, causing him to crash into trees. As Terry prepares food with her daughter Ryan, the doorbell rings. Terry thinks Jeffrey arrived early, but it's Colin asking to use her phone for help. Terry lends him the house phone, then leaves him alone to tend to Ryan. Colin looks at the door Terry left open, and when she returns, he asks for a ride to his car. Terry says her husband isn't home, but will be arriving soon. She asks Colin if the tow truck can pick him up at her house, and he agrees. After the phone call, Colin waits outside for the tow truck. Terry pities him since the weather's bad and offers to let him in. She grimaces when she sees the injury and fetches a first aid kit for him. Colin hides his gun and Ryan steps out, wanting to meet the stranger. Terry asks her to get some tissue for Colin and reveals she has her baby, Sam, in the nursery. The 2 introduce themselves, and Colin looks intently at her as she tends to his wound. Terry gives him a new shirt, and Colin asks about her husband. Terry explains that they met in law school, and she used to be a prosecutor. She continues about her cases being about violence against women since it was easy for her to solve. Terry elaborates how someone close to the woman always ends up hurting or ending them. She boasts about how the male criminals made her job easier since they're dumb and weak. Thunder roars, causing her car to alarm, and Terry rushes to turn it off before it wakes Sam. The key's sensor doesn't work, so Colin offers to turn it off for her. Colin enters the car to read the manual, and Terry follows. They rush back inside once the alarm is shut off. Terry prepares tea for him, and Colin mentions her husband when he sees a picture of him on the fridge. Terry asks him if he has a partner, and Colin recalls how he ended Alexis. He brings her up as his ex-fiancée, who cheated on him and couldn't bear the pain since they were going to marry. Terry tells him marriage isn't everything, and Colin thinks she no longer loves her husband. Terry clarifies that she still does, but misses her spark before marriage, and worries that Jeffrey sees her differently now. Colin consoles her that she's still a strong and fierce woman. Terry puts Ryan to bed, and Colin excuses himself to go to the bathroom. As Terry changes her outfit, she jumps at Colin's sudden appearance. He asks if she's looking for her husband, but she reveals he isn't coming home, eliciting a tense reaction from Colin. The doorbell rings, and Terry reminds him of the tow truck. When she answers the door, she's greeted by Meg. Colin walks to the front door, and Meg is surprised by Terry's guest. Colin introduces himself, and Terry explains the situation to Meg. Meg brings out wine for girls' night and introduces herself to Colin. She flirts with him and calls him handsome, then reveals she's a realtor when Colin tells her the street he lives at. Meg asks him which address he lives at, since she knows everyone on the street where he lives, and Colin looks hesitant. They're interrupted when a broken branch crashes through the kitchen window. Colin patches it up, and the three of them share wine. In the living room, Meg fawns over Colin and compares dirty exercise to the gym, saying it's better to use more than one piece of equipment. Colin doesn't see Meg as the type to settle down and marry, and Meg replies that she'll only marry if she finds the right person. Meg and Terry spill the story of how they met, and Colin starts to zone out. He starts looking at them weirdly as he gets flashbacks of ending Alexis. Terry tells Meg about Colin's recent breakup and pours more wine for them. Sam's cries ring out on the radio, and Terry leaves the two alone. Colin goes out for a smoke, and Meg follows. Meg asks him if something is happening between him and Terry, but he only grins. This causes Meg to assume they're having an affair and wonders why Terry didn't tell her. Colin causes Meg to think that Terry doesn't trust her anymore and lies about Terry not wanting her to find out. Meg cusses him out, not believing him, and says she and Terry know everything about each other. Meg calls him out for being suspicious and calls for Terry to talk with her, but Colin doesn't hesitate to whack her with a shovel. He returns inside and tells Terry that Meg has left. Terry gets confused and decides to contact her, but she notices Meg's umbrella still by the door. As she walks towards the phone, Colin mentions her lie about Jeffrey and asks where he's at. Terry nervously excuses herself to call Meg and wonders if she was upset when she left. The phone doesn't seem to work, and she finds the wires cut and notices all the knives missing. Terry looks for Colin as the electricity falters. She anxiously checks up on her kids and sees Colin playing with Ryan. Terry demands Colin to put her down, but continues lifting her. She notices the pistol behind Colin and nervously tells Ryan she needs to go to bed. Terry tucks Ryan in bed, and Colin asks her if something's wrong. Terry sees Colin's necklace, which he gave Ryan, and chucks it back at him. When they leave Ryan's room, Terry grabs the fire extinguisher and attacks Colin, making him fall down the stairs. She rushes to get Sam and Ryan, but Colin comes right back up. After Terry places Sam back in his crib, Colin aims his gun at Terry and orders her to walk to the bathroom. He puts her in the shower and gets naked. Colin rinses the foam from the fire extinguisher while Terry is beside him. When he finishes, he pushes Terry into the closet for a change of clothes. They get dressed, and Terry says she's tired of Colin's BS. Colin thinks it's ironic how she's a district attorney, but is clueless about him. Terry hits Colin's head with a lamp and runs off. She locks herself in the office and calls the police. Colin breaks in and hangs up the phone, then Terry takes a knife and slashes his waist to break free. Colin chases her to the kitchen, and Terry offers to let him go before the cops arrive, so things don't get messy. Colin orders her to get the kids so they can flee before the cops arrive. Terry and her children exit through the garage with Colin behind them, and Terry finds Meg's deceased body on the ground. Terry drives the car, following Colin's directions. She sees his crashed vehicle with cops inspecting it, and Colin tells her not to get any ideas. On the road, Terry meets a police car and flashes her lights to get their attention, while Colin's eyes are closed. She continues driving when Colin looks ahead, but he notices the police car stop behind them. The cop car makes a U-turn as the sirens turn on. Colin orders her to pull over and takes Sam in his arms. As the cop approaches their vehicle, Colin tells her to act normally. The cop sees Colin's injury and asks what happened. Colin lies that he got hurt after a tree branch crashed through the window. He asks the officer if anything's wrong, and Ryan asks Terry where her dad is and wants to go home. The officer gets suspicious and urges Terry to step out of the car. Colin glares through the side mirror as Terry speaks with the cop, and Terry tries to make excuses about blinking her headlights. She's asked about Colin's identity, and Terry lies about an affair since her husband's out of town. The officer informs her not to involve her kids, and Terry apologizes. The cop wonders why Terry keeps looking back at the car and asks if she's hiding something. Colin places Sam in his car seat and prepares his gun. Terry tries to whisper that she can't say anything, but she's still loud AF, so Colin hears. Colin rushes out of the car and shoots the officer. Terry screams and Colin drags the cop's body to the side. Terry cries as Colin's gun is at her head, and she's forced to drive away. They pull up to a house and enter with the kids. Terry puts her children to bed and assures Ryan they're just having a sleepover. Colin orders her to find a med kit to patch him up, and when the lights are on, Terry sees Alexis's body on the floor. A thunder roars and the car starts alarming. Colin rushes to shut it off, but it doesn't work, leaving him no choice but to step out and turn it off manually. Colin ties Terry up so she doesn't move around while he's outside. When Colin leaves, Alexis's phone starts ringing. Terry finds something sharp to cut the ropes and answers it. To her surprise, she hears Jeffrey calling out for Alexis. Terry looks at Alexis's deceased figure in disbelief and responds to Jeffrey that his girlfriend is dead and to call the cops. When Colin returns, he doesn't see Terry and finds blanket ropes outside the window. He hurries outside to look for them, and Terry exits the closet with her kids. As she approaches the front door, she sees Colin, then turns around. Terry hides her kids and grabs a knife for defense. She runs upstairs as Colin walks back inside and he slowly approaches the closet that her children are in. Terry makes noise for distraction and hides. When Colin scouts upstairs for her, Terry swings at him from the corner with the knife. Colin shouts in pain and Terry falls to the ground. He aims his gun at her and Terry says that Jeffrey's on his way. She also mentions how Colin knew about Jeffrey and Alexis's affair and is doing all this to seek revenge. Ryan walks in, distracting Colin, and Terry uses the opportunity to kick him where the sun doesn't shine. She shouts for Ryan to run away, and Colin starts choking Terry on the ground. She grabs the keys and stabs his wound repeatedly, trying to get to his gun. Terry whacks him and thinks he's finally knocked out, but he grabs her legs and they continue to fight. Terry is slammed to the ground and stops moving. Colin approaches her, but she holds the gun and shoots him multiple times until he falls out the window. Sirens approach the house and Jeffrey rushes towards his family. He apologizes to Terry and explains that his relationship with Alexis didn't mean anything. Terry's tired of everyone's BS and throws a punch at his face. Time passes by and Terry moves into a new home with her kids. She looks at a picture of her with Meg and smiles at it.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.